shadow from the starlight is softer than a lullaby. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. He climbed the Fever Mountain.
Nothing like some soothing John Denver to really capture the spirit of the Rocky Mountain High, to quote Dumb and Dumber. I think that John Denver was full of shit. But welcome nonetheless to Week 12 of the NFL season. My name, of course, is Drew Garino, here to bring you the League of Legends action for Week 12. First and foremost, happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. I hope your day is filled with food, family, fun, and of course, football. Now, quick summary of what happened last week in the League of Legends. Very important win for Cam Ahern, who now sits at 7-4 in third place. He was able to solidify a playoff spot there, really as a result of Dennis and Bud both losing to drop to 6-5. I also lost to bring my record to 7-4, still holding on barely to the second place spot. And of course, congratulations must go out to Ryan, who sits atop the League's of Legends standings at 10-1. He was the first member to actually clinch a playoff spot for this year. So congratulations to Ryan. We'll see you in the big dance. The question is, who is going to join him? Summary of last week, another good week for me, going 4-1 on the week, bringing my total on the season to 37-13. Let's not waste any further time. Let's get into the action for this week. First matchup we have is Sean, who comes in with a record of 4-7. Very tough loss for him last week, an upset loss to Steve. He faces off against the aforementioned Ryan, who sits at 10-1. Looking at Sean's team, a guy that really came on strong last week for Sean in the flex position is a guy I think will have another good game this week. That's Delaney Walker, who is playing at home this week against the Oakland Raiders. Now, Delaney Walker actually leads the team in all receiving categories: touchdowns, receptions, yards. So there's no reason to think that Mariota's not going to look for him. He's going to have another good game. He's going to see a lot of targets, and it's a beatable secondary with the Oakland Raiders. So I like Delaney Walker in the flex position for Sean this week. Now, a guy I'm down on this week, and it really is because the Patriots are going through some growing pains right now in the offense. I'm going to put LeGarrette Blount in the down category. Of course, he's playing at Denver this week in the Sunday night matchup. Really, it's because there's so many moving parts right now with that New England offense. I just think that Denver has a really strong defense in general, so I don't see this being a big LeGarrette Blount game. If anything, it could be more Amendola, it could be more Gronkowski. He was pretty invisible last week for Sean as well. But I don't think this is a big LeGarrette Blount game this week against Denver, so I'm going to put him in the down category. Now, when you look at Ryan's team, a guy that he was able to swiftly insert into the lineup was Thomas Rawls, who went off for over 40 points last week against the San Francisco 49ers. Now, with Marshawn Lynch being out for a couple of weeks, it's really important that Ryan has Rawls on his roster. He's going to be able to plug and play him for the rest of the regular season, it looks like. So Thomas Rawls this week has Pittsburgh at home, which is not a great matchup, but just due to the volume that he's going to be receiving in the backfield, there's really nobody else there. They don't have Christine Michael anymore. He's going to be the guy. He's going to get the touches, and I think he's going to have another effective game. Maybe not as effective as last week, but certainly very strong for Ryan's team. When you look in the down category, a guy that's really going to be struggling, in my opinion, as a result of his quarterback going down for the season last week, that's Kamar Aiken. Kamar Aiken is the wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. He plays on the road against Cleveland this week. It's a very beatable matchup. I just don't like the fact that he doesn't have his starting quarterback there anymore. When you look at this matchup, this one should be close. Sean definitely needs this win to stay alive. Certainly Ryan's preparing for the playoffs, but I'm going to take Ryan to win this one. He's going to move to 11-1 with the victory and all but clinch our defending champ from a playoff exit. He will not be making the playoffs as a result of this loss. Next matchup we have is 6-5 Dennis coming in to a matchup with 4-7 Adam. Dennis has Larry Fitzgerald going on Sunday against the San Francisco 49ers. Certainly that is a very beatable matchup. The Niners right now are a mess. Larry Fitzgerald is playing really good football at this point. Carson Palmer is getting him the ball early and often. So I think Larry Fitzgerald's in line for another big game on Sunday. A guy I'm going to put in the down category, I'm going to stick with the receiver position. I'm going to put Allen Hurns in the down category this week. Not a lot of guys on Dennis's team I don't like, but Allen Hurns is coming off an injury. He has a good matchup. It's on the road against the Chargers. I just think that he's a little banged up more than they're leading on. He's been practicing, I believe, this week, but I think they're just going to look at other options. TJ Yeldon, Robinson, Julius Thomas, things like that. So I'm going to put Allen Hurns in the down category for Dennis this week. A guy for Adam that I'm going to like, it's someone who was relevant in a past fantasy life, who has not been very relevant this year until last week. That is Vincent Jackson, who is playing on the road against the Indianapolis Colts. Very beatable matchup. The Buccaneers are playing some pretty good football at the moment. Seems like Winston's going to develop into a decent quarterback. And Vincent Jackson was the beneficiary of a lot of targets last week. So I think this is a positive thing for Adam. This is going to be someone that he can plug into the lineup moving forward. And I think he's going to have another big game this week against the Colts. Guy I'm going to put in the down category, and this is really because Eddie Lacy has returned. He finally looked more like his old self last week. So that's James Starks. He's playing tonight against the Chicago Bears in the Brett Favre ceremonial game. James Starks, to me, is a guy that's played really well this year. He's done a really admirable job in spot duty. It's just because Eddie Lacy's coming back. That's where I see issues. I don't think he's going to have the volume that Adam's going to need out of that position. So I'm going to put James Starks in the down category for Adam. When you look at this matchup as a whole, Dennis desperately needs this victory. He needs this win to move it to 7-5. And thankfully, he's playing Adam's team that's just been decimated by injuries of late. So I'm going to give the win to Dennis. He's going to get that win and move to 7-5 on the season. The next matchup we have is Dave, who comes in with a record of 4-7, trying to make things interesting, maybe make a late season run here. He faces off against Steve, who was a big winner last week against Sean. That improved his record to 3-8. So now there might be some competition there for the pink stripes. Dave will see Odell Beckham Jr. return to the lineup after a bye week. He has a very favorable matchup. He is playing at Washington on Sunday in the afternoon game. Gotta think he's going to have a monster game. Eli's been playing pretty well of late. Odell Beckham Jr. should be the recipient of a lot of throws. There's really nobody in the Washington secondary that's going to be able to match up with him. So I'm looking for a 20-point performance there for Odell Beckham Jr. Looking at the downside, staying at the receiver position, it's a guy who was really invisible the last time he played. Prior to that, he's been very good. But I'm going to put Willie Snead in the down category for Dave. He's playing on the road against Houston. That's actually a pretty tough matchup. Houston is playing really well right now. They're making a run there now at 5-5 on the season in the horrendous AFC South. So Willie Snead for me is just a guy. I think it's a tough matchup for him. And if he wasn't involved in last time the Saints played their game plan, then I don't like his productivity potential on Sunday. Looking at Steve's team, got a monster performance from this individual last week to the tune of 250 rushing yards. That's Douglas Martin, who is playing on the road against the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday. Now, I don't think he's going to be getting 250 yards rushing by any means. I think it's another good game potentially for Doug Martin. Colts defense up front isn't really spectacular. I think this is a chance where the Buccaneers really need to get him involved in the game in order to be successful in this ball game. So I'm going to think that Doug Martin's going to be part of that game plan, and he's going to have a nice game for Steve on Sunday. Looking at the down category, a guy who had a decent game last week. He's pretty relevant in PPR formats. He's just not the number one option on his team. That's Doug Baldwin. He's playing at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday. Definitely an important matchup in terms of the teams playing, the Seahawks versus the Steelers. But I just don't think Doug Baldwin is integrated enough into the offense to make a viable fantasy contribution. They certainly have Jimmy Graham. They have Tyler Lockett, Thomas Rawls. There's a lot of other weapons there for the Seahawks to utilize. And Pittsburgh's defense, to the surprise of many, has played very well this season. And I think Doug Baldwin could be in for a tough game on Sunday. When you look at this matchup as a whole, I don't think this lightning can strike twice there for Steve. Dave's going to win this one. He's going to move up to 5-7 on the season, and don't look now. He could be in the fantasy playoff conversation. We'll see. Time will tell. Next matchup we have is myself coming in with a record of 7-4 off two pretty awful losses in the last 2 weeks. I'm facing off against Bud, who comes in with a record of 6-5. Desperately needs this win to stay in the fantasy playoff conversation. So very important game for both gentlemen as they get into week 12 of the NFL season. Looking at Drew's team, a lot of injuries right now that Drew is dealing with. So a guy that's going to have to come in and be a spot starter is Michael Crabtree. Crabtree is having really a resurgence of some sort this year for the Oakland Raiders. Certainly beneficiary of David Carr and his strong play this season. Michael Crabtree is playing against the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. It's a road game. He's going to be involved in the offense. He's going to get a lot of touches, and I think he's going to have a very strong game against a very weak secondary with the Titans. Looking at the down category, a guy who really was invisible last week, and he was also invisible against this particular team the last time they played in week 4. That's Lamar Miller. Lamar Miller had a nice string of weeks. It was 5 weeks in a row that he had actually scored a touchdown. That streak ended last week, and I have a hard time believing that he's going to find the end zone again this week for Drew's team. So, tough matchup. The Dolphins are not playing very good football at the moment, so not someone I have a lot of faith in terms of getting viable fantasy contributions this week. Looking at Bud's team, a guy I like this week is Martavius Bryant. He is playing on the road against Seattle, which seems like a very tough matchup. But Ben Roethlisberger is back. Ben with Bryant last time had a monster day. That was 2 weeks ago because the Steelers had a bye last week. He had 27 points against the Cleveland Browns. Certainly the Seattle secondary is a lot better than Cleveland's, but I still think that Bryant is going to be a big part of the game plan. They're really going to try to take Antonio Brown away from the Steelers offense, so I think Bryant is going to be the recipient of a lot more targets, a lot more throws in his direction. Staying at the receiver position for Bud, guy I'm going to put in the down category is Dontrell Inman. He is playing at Jacksonville on Sunday. Really, Rivers right now is not playing great football. He had a really rough game last week. Chargers have been decimated by injuries both up front and in the receiving core, as it's been well documented over the last couple of weeks. So Inman, to me, is not someone who's going to give you a really important fantasy contribution on Sunday. When you look at this matchup as a whole, the projected score seems very lopsided. I actually think this matchup is going to be a lot closer. Drew's been underperforming the last couple of weeks. At the end of the day, I'm going to take him to win. I don't think it's going to be by as many points as it's currently projected. I think this one could actually be pretty close. So definitely one to watch for as we get into the later action on Sunday and into Monday. Now, we're going to go to the matchup of the week. I'm looking at 4-7 Bill. He's won 4 games in a row. He faces off against Cam, who's off a huge win last week. He moved up to 7-4 on the season. So can Bill stay in the conversation here? Is he going to start to get creeping towards Bud and Dennis and those kind of guys as they look for that last spot in the fantasy playoffs? Looking at Bill's team, a guy who should have a really great Thanksgiving game, Calvin Johnson, plays today against the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, another team that's secondary is in complete shambles. The team's a mess. Calvin Johnson should feast, no pun intended, against the Philadelphia Eagles this week. Looking at the down category, I'm going to put James White at Denver in the down category. You just don't know. It's a very risky start. I totally understand why Bill is putting him in there. Certainly he had the 2 touchdowns last week. He only had 4 touches in that game. He had 4 catches in the game. Certainly he made the most of it. So it's really game plan dependent. I don't think the running backs in general are going to have a great game against Denver. I think the Patriots offense is definitely going to struggle again this week. Certainly a very tough defense in the Denver Broncos. So I just don't have that much confidence in James White to get the volume of touches that he's going to need moving forward. Looking at Cam's team, a guy who's had some really great games this week, arguably the MVP of his team, that's Carson Palmer. He is playing on the road against the San Francisco 49ers. I think he's in line for a really big game on Sunday. San Francisco is not good at all on both sides of the ball, but particularly with their defense. Carson Palmer's playing some great football right now. He's really integrating a lot of his receivers into the action. He had John Brown come back last week. Larry Fitzgerald's there. Gresham is there. I mean, there's multiple guys that he can get the ball to. So I like Carson Palmer to have a big game for Cam on Sunday. Looking at the down category, guy who struggled last week. He's dealing with an injury right now. He did practice yesterday. So he should be okay in terms of his availability. That's Jarvis Landry, who is playing at the New York Jets. Certainly that means Revis. Revis is banged up right now as well, but Jarvis Landry to me is a guy, he's really been kind of invisible the last couple of weeks, so I don't have a lot of confidence in him now, and then when you throw the injury on top of that, even more reason to be skeptical about his ability to have a big day on Sunday. So I'm going to put Jarvis Landry in the down category. Now, when you look at this matchup, Cam is projected to win by, I believe, close to 15 points. This matchup is going to be much closer than that. There's a couple of guys that I think have inflated scores. Antonio Brown, 22 points. That's a lot of points there. It's a tough matchup for him. I don't know if he's going to get that amount. Chris Johnson, can he get 14 points? Can Eddie Lacy get 10 points? A lot of inflation there on Cam's team. So I'm going to look past that, and I'm actually going to take Bill to win this matchup. Calvin Johnson's going to have a big game for him today. You got Tony Romo, who's going to have another a good game, in my opinion. He's playing against Carolina. So I actually am going to go with the upset. I'm going to take Bill to win. He's going to move to 5-7 on the season, while Cam will fall to 7-5. I still think Cam is in good position to make the playoffs there, but it's certainly going to get dicey there moving forward, because there's a lot of guys there that are right in the middle. There's a lot of parity in this league at the moment, so that could be a really one to watch for based on what they do on today and then going into Sunday and Monday. Now, again, very important week for many in the League of Legends, but it's most important that you have a great Thanksgiving. I hope everyone enjoys themselves and have a lot of fun. Give my best to you and yours as you have your meals today. And of course, as always, enjoy the action.
She saw silver clouds below. She saw everything as far as you can see. And they say that he got crazy once and he tried to touch